And you brought up the child abuse issue. And so I guess what should parents and adults say to a minor who is threatening suicide? They're saying, well, I'm struggling with depression. I'm struggling with these suicidal thoughts if they don't let them transition. And so, we hear a lot about empathy, especially from those on the left. This is a conservative show. And so we always hear this, well, you need to be empathetic. But I guess my question is, what is the true empathetic thing to do when it comes to these struggling kids? Like what you're saying, parents freeze in that moment. Well, what do I do? Do I let them transition even though I know they're not trans? I'm scared my kid's going to hurt themselves.
Right. So here's the thing. A lot of therapists have outright lied to parents and doctors as well, and way overblowing the risk of suicide if you don't transition your child. Okay. So these parents were lied to. Many of them were. And I would say, number one, always take a suicide threat seriously. Okay. That must always be taken seriously. There's no question. But we actually have no good evidence to show that any kind of transition improves the mental health of these children. So they are rushing them to radical and experimental and dangerous treatments with no good evidence that this will even improve their mental health problems. And in many, many cases, it doesn't improve it at all. That's why other countries are now cutting back on all these treatments. Only the United States is full steam ahead.
And how easy is it actually for these kids to go through a medical transition? I mean, do they just, show up and how easy can they even get hormones?
Very easily. All right. So the age of medical consent varies by state. In Oregon, it is 15. And in Washington State, you can get mental health services, which may include a gender dysphoria, which does include gender dysphoria at age 13. Kids are getting empowered to make these decisions, these life-altering decisions, younger and younger. They are ordering testosterone over the internet. They are low-dosing T in middle school and high school. They have no idea how dangerous these medications are. And frankly, our medical establishment has completely whitewashed how dangerous they are because they're afraid of their own activists.
Right. And so what happens to the doctors that actually are brave enough to speak out and say, I don't think that this is right. I think we're jumping to conclusions with some of these kids, giving them life-altering medicines. They don't even know what they're getting into. What happens to them once they say something?
Well, I talked to one yesterday who was fired, a well-known psychiatrist who was fired. Several doctors have been in Canada. The world expert in gender dysphoria, Ken Zucker, was fired. Again, totally activist-led. This man literally wrote the definition of gender dysphoria for the psychiatric manual. He oversaw it. He had been treating kids successfully with therapy that explored the whole child, did not focus on gender only. And he was treating these kids successfully. Most of them were outgrowing it. Even the ones who had real gender dysphoria. I don't think that most of these teenage girls do have real gender dysphoria, but he was treating real cases and he was treating them successfully. Nonetheless, he was fired because activists demanded it. And that's what we're seeing across the board. The good doctors are being silenced. They're really afraid of losing their jobs.
And speaking of just medical care, I saw you tweet something about Planned Parenthood saying that they were one of the top providers of testosterone in the country. And then did they delete that statement off their website or something? What happened with that?
Yeah, I think Alex DeSantis over at on the Federalist report.
Yeah.
Was it Federalist or I don't remember which outlet she reported on, that they had, after I had written that article, apparently they deleted that. They don't want everyone to know they're making all their money with testosterone today, but they are. They're making a tremendous amount of money with testosterone. And, we know that teenage girls are having sex at much lower rates. They're getting pregnant at much lower rates, but they are really keen on testosterone. And Planned Parenthood can't wait to provide it. And what my article was about was an ex-employee of Planned Parenthood had contacted me, or I had reached out to her because she had posted about it privately on social media. And I reached out to her. I was able to get in touch with her and verify that she had worked at Planned Parenthood. And she said girls were coming in groups of friends, giggling in the waiting room to get testosterone. This is not what gender dysphoria looks like. If you talk to any older, what we used to call transsexuals, they weren't doing this because of peer approval. They were doing this because of, real, genuine dysphoria. But what's going on today is very, very different.
And what is the healthcare experience of the people, the professionals at Planned Parenthood that are administering these hormones?
Well, sometimes there's no doctor on site. They do a quick checklist. They do some blood work, and then you're off and running. You get your testosterone that day. The whole appointment can be an hour long, and you can walk out the same day with testosterone. There are clinics now. There are some, apparently there, people have said there are as many as 300 pediatric gender clinics in the country now, up from 2 a decade ago. I can tell you that, depending on the state, you don't even need parental approval, and you almost never need a therapist note to begin hormone therapy. So it's given out very easily, and it has permanent, lasting, and very negative effects.
I get DMs a lot from parents saying, well, this gender stuff in schools is only happening in places like LA and New York. This would never happen in my, small town public school. What is the reality? Are private schools and public schools actually safe from this kind of ideology or not?
No. This is happening all over. This is certainly happening all over. Kaiser gives it out. Planned Parenthood gives it out. I mean, these medical institutions are all over the country, but also it's absolutely in the private schools. This first time you get a woke teacher, and the woke teachers are everywhere, they start creating what they call a safe space. But what they really mean is an unmonitored space where we shut out the parents and even lie to them and don't tell them we're indoctrinating the children in these extremist ideologies. And that's what they proceed to do.
So if that's happening, what are parents supposed to do? What rights do they have if they find out that a school or a teacher has been keeping info about their child from them?
Actually, we don't have enough rights on this. Even schools are deliberately avoiding FERPA. That's the Federal Privacy Act that entitles them to children's educational records. They're getting around this by keeping the gender identity that they have helped the child realize. They're keeping that secret. The child can go by a new name and gender for an entire year without the parents knowing it. I know because I've talked to the parents and I've seen the documents, and they just keep the records separate from the school's other educational records. So it's not subject to FERPA. We really need federal legislation to give parents the rights to see every document that has to do with their child.
Hey, if you saw that and you're like, whoa, I've never heard any other conservative podcast like this, well, you'd be right. That's why you need to go subscribe to the Politics YouTube channel for more episodes of The Spillover.